Welcome to the new season of the She 2.0 podcast, and I'm calling this season Girl with a Pearl. And the reason is, in the past couple of years, we've had a lot of experts on. We talk about, issues related to menopause and perimenopause, both psychological and physical, and it's been wonderful. Have been so privileged to be joined by so many great experts in Canada and the US. I feel like I've learned a lot. I hope you've learned a lot through this series. But I'm changing things up this season because what I would love to hear more from is the actual women in the trenches, like women who are, going through perimenopause and menopause, who have wisdom to share. And, our experiences may not all be positive, but that doesn't mean we can't have a positive outlook. So I'm really excited today to have Kathy Buckworth join me. I've known Kathy for a few years. She is a media personality. She is vivacious. She is a firecracker, and she doesn't stop. Kathy is the author of 6 nonfiction books. As I said, she's a TV and radio personality. You've seen her on Cityline, on Rogers. You've probably heard her on Zoomer with her podcast, Go To Grandma. She's an award-winning writer. She's a travel writer. She's a mentor. She is one of Canada's first grandfluencers. And that is why I've asked Kathy to join me today, because Kathy is the epitome of what I think it looks like to be aging in society. Age is just something she doesn't even really regard. And the reason I've asked Kathy to join me is because her perspective and her outlook about aging and how we live our life from decade to decade is really motivational. It's really inspiring. I love everything she has to say. And I really want to put Kathy forward as a role model for how we should start looking at ourselves and, aging in general, because it is actually a privilege. It is an honor, and it's not an opportunity we all get. Kathy talks about, being in the media spotlight and dealing with things like menopause and ageism and aging. If anything, Kathy is busier now. She's more productive. She never stops. In fact, she continues to ramp up, and she's always trying new things. Like, nothing stops Kathy Buckworth. So tune in and have a listen to the new Girl with a Pearl series, and wait till the end where Kathy shares her pearl of wisdom with you. Kathy, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing really well, Jackie. Thanks for having me on today. I'm excited about our conversation.
Me too. Kathy, you and I have spoken over the years just about aging and menopause
Mhm.
and how it's impacted our lives, our lifestyle, our career, etc. So I wanted to talk to you a little more today because I know a lot of women are kind of hitting the pinnacle of their
Mhm.
careers and they're hitting menopause at the same time, and they're hitting sandwich generation, and they might have kids or they might have grandchildren like you.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the reason I wanted to talk to you, Kathy, is you're very inspirational. You are constantly evolving yourself and growing. And, in a time of our lives when the media is telling us we should be like slowing down and stepping back, you are actually kicking things into higher gear. So I love that.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I maybe the older I get, I'm 61. I have 3 grandkids. I still my parents, thank goodness, but I am what I call the double decker sandwich generation because it's my kids, right? 4 kids, 3 grandkids, and then my parents, right? But I think it is a perspective of getting older where I feel like, why can't I do that? Like, why shouldn't I try? I think uh, generally, not just me, I think we become less afraid of failure because we recognize that failure doesn't set us back all that far. I mean, it sucks. Let's be honest. People who say failure is great, it's not. Like, let's be honest, right? But it teaches us something, right? And then in the back of our mind, it's like, well, that didn't work. Let's try something else. So I think that's the
Yes.
mindset that I generally have right now.
Good. I love to hear that. I have a question for you. Do you know approximately how old you were when you started to notice you might be going into menopause or
Yep.
changes were happening?
Yeah, I would say it was about 50. Not my 50th birthday per se, but in the 50th year, sort of. And I started to feel, well, first of all, you start, not having your period, and that's a good sign. We're like, yay, let's get that 12 months out of the way, as they say, as the marker. But just general things. I had a really weird thing, and I think some other women have it, itchy legs. I know that sounds strange, but I looked that up, and that was a weird symptom. of course, just a bit moody, whatever. I never really struggled with big PMS, I'll be honest. And I'm not just saying that. Like you could ask my family, that nobody died. So, that was weird for me to sort of be feeling that, thinking, why am I so angry? Like that's not generally who I am. So a few little signs like that, and then the hot flashes,
Ugh,
which it's funny when you talk about the hot flashes. It's such a descriptor of menopause. People are like, what's the big deal? Well, if you've had one, it's huge. You literally feel like you're on fire. This, burning from the inside out. I'd be sitting in a makeup chair, getting ready to go on television, like literally makeup streaming down my face. I couldn't, like, just hot, hot all the time. And it's so inconvenient and uncomfortable. So that went on for about 3 years. And I thought, I can tough it out. This is fine. And then I read somewhere it could last for 10. I'm like, I'm out. I'm out. I'm not
I'm
doing 10. I'm out. Like, sorry, I'm canceling. So that's when I went on bioidentical hormones. I went on HRT. Yeah.
you were one
And
of the
it's,
first people to tell
yeah.
me about bioidenticals.
Yeah, and it worked. Like when I remember being there, I had a progesterone patch and an estrogen pill, or vice versa, a while ago now. But anyway, a patch and a pill, and it worked overnight. I'm not kidding you, overnight. And I
Yeah.
stayed on it for about, from age, I guess, then 53 to 58, something like that, like about 5 years. And I thought, well, what would happen if I stop? Like if it's terrible again, I'll just go back on again. I was thinking,
Yeah.
and I went off it, and I was fine. So I haven't been on anything like that for 3 or 4 years, but everyone's different, and that's the message we need to explain too, right? Just because that was my experience
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's not someone else's. Yeah.
It's funny you said that about hot flashes because I think a lot of women, if they don't get a hot flash, they don't think they're in peri or
Right.
menopause. And it's
Right.
not the only sign. It's like one of
It's
almost
not. It's
90.
not. It's exactly. It's like when they say, your water breaks.
Yeah.
I had 4 kids. My water never broke ever. So
Yeah,
it's
me
one of those,
neither.
and I never had morning sickness. So it's all these things that people say, you always get this when you're pregnant. You always get this when you have menopause. Not true, right?
Yeah,
Everyone's different. Yeah,
exactly. One thing just on the hot flashes, it drives me crazy when people make jokes about them.
I
Not
know.
like women, we can make jokes, but it's kind of
Yes.
like, no one else can insult my mom, just me, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but I was
Exactly.
speaking with someone recently about hot flashes and women in their careers, and I said, you have no idea, like, when someone has a hot flash, if you're in a boardroom presenting to your
Hmm.
peers, or even like younger people who are coming up the ranks,
Hmm.
it's not just that you're sweating and you're hot and everyone's looking at you. It's a self-conscious thing like, oh my God, I'm so exposed right now. They're gonna know I'm in menopause. Therefore, I'm gonna be redundant or invisible or
Right.
demoted or discriminated against. Like it's just as psychological as it is physical.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. You can't hide it. You literally can't. Like you're sweating buckets. It's dripping down your face, down your back, your blouse, your armpits, like everything. Jacket on. You know this, right? In the boardroom, jacket on, jacket off, jacket
Yep.
on. And it's like, what are you doing next to me when So yeah, you're absolutely exposed in terms of menopause. And you don't want to make a joke about it, but you don't want to hide it. You don't want to expose it because, as we know, sometimes and most often in the workplace, age related things are not taken positively. So,
No, they're not. And that's the
you know,
problem. It does create discrimination. And I think that's really unfair because, again, look at you. You're just ramping up. Like, you've had this great career, this very enviable career, and you're not slowing down at all. So I think that's such a great message for women. I do want to ask you, when you
mhm.
started to realize that you were in menopause and you are so busy and you're on TV or on the radio, um, was your expectation of menopause the same as your experience?
Oh, what a great question. I don't know that I had a lot of expectations. My mom never talked about it. And I think that's where, as women, we get a lot of information about our periods, about pregnancy, motherhood, etc. And my mom just never talked about it. And I asked her about it afterwards. She said it just wasn't that bad for her, which is why she didn't feel she had to mention it. So I got most of my expectations laid by what I read in the media, right? What we were supposed to go through. And I thought, a couple of hot flashes here and there, no more periods, bring it on. Like this sounds really good actually. And it was more than that. It's the mental side of it. I agree. And I didn't, a lot of women I think struggle with it's the end of your childbearing years, and that does that make you feel old? Like even if you wanted to have another one at 50, you cannot. That's it's always something that when it's taken away from you, maybe you want it again. I
Yeah.
didn't. I was good. Fork it. I'm good. But I know that mentally, that's a place where you go to as well, saying, I'm not in my childbearing years anymore. How do I feel about that? So I did a lot more checking in with myself than I thought that I would. I was turning, as I said, turned 50 at the same time. And I have to say, turning 50 kind of kicked my butt. Turning 40 didn't bother me at all. turning 50 was like, oh, okay, this is the back nine. I'm not
Yes,
even middle aged anymore because I'm not going to live to be 100 probably. And so, but then when I turned 60, I was absolutely fine. I'm not kidding you. Like 60s have been great. And my 50s were amazing. It was just getting over that hurdle. So I
it
think there
is.
was just a lot going on at that time. So I'm not sure that I had expectations. Maybe that was that was a good thing. Maybe it was a bad thing. I'm not sure. But certainly, as one of the older of many of my friends and peers, and obviously people in the media, I didn't mind actually going through it that way because then I could talk to them about it, about what they should expect if they ask me. I'm not going to launch into a conversation with anyone asking me,
Yeah.
but yeah, I was able to share my experience down or out, to women who were just starting on that journey. And I have a lot of friends. I have a good friend. She's 52. She's still getting her period. Actually,
Yeah.
she's 50, 54, I think. And I'm like, yikes. And I'm like, good luck for the years ahead. I'm kind of glad it's behind me, but been asking me all kinds of questions and I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah. I have a friend
Yeah.
who's 57 getting a regular period. I just don't
Oh,
get it.
poor
I
girl.
know.
Like, poor woman, I should say.
So every
Yeah.
time someone looks at me and says, "Oh, you're postmenopausal," I'm like, "Yep." But
Yep.
one thing I learned is my expectation of it, because I went through early menopause. I was postmenopausal by 47.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I still think it had something to do with having my only daughter later in life and having multiple pregnancies. Like I think that
Maybe. Yeah.
probably wreaked havoc. But I remember thinking, oh, once I go that year, it's done. And it
Hmm.
is not done. I am like 10 years, 9 years later, I
Hmm.
still have the hot flashes, the hormones, the rushes. Like, yeah, I've got to sort it all out, but I also can't really go on hormone therapy. So I'm trying to find
Yeah.
alternative ways to deal with it. But I also do myself no favors. I eat well when I eat well, and when I don't, I'm just like rushing and grabbing something on the way out the door. I drink
Yeah. I
wine,
guess,
I don't
yeah.
sleep well.
Exactly. And I think that's the other thing you learn is my sleep is still interrupted. I don't get hot flashes anymore. Yay. Me. But
Yay.
I do, my sleep is still interrupted, but I don't care anymore. Do you know what I mean? I got over
Yeah.
it sort of. It was like, I'm awake at 2 o'clock. Guess I'll read a book. Like, not like, oh my God, if I fall asleep right now, I'll only get an hour, sleep before I have
Yes.
to get up. So I go to bed when I'm tired, 8:30, 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whenever, and then if I wake up in the middle of the night and I think, I don't have to get up yet, I will just read a book or watch a show or do whatever. So I think that's just accepting that those days of the long sleep, for me at any rate, are gone. And that's okay. As long as I feel well rested. I'm like you, I eat pretty well, except when I don't. And I do drink wine and I do some things where I think, well, that wasn't the smartest thing, but
Yeah,
you kind of know what's coming,
you do.
you know?
I'm like, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if I ever had a seafood allergy, I'd just walk around with an EpiPen because I'm not giving up lobster. So,
Okay.
like,
That's
I
actually funny.
sort of feel like it's the same. My husband made a fatal error. He bought a digital clock for the bedroom, and it shines the light at
Oh.
the time on your ceiling. And I said to him, "Have you ever woken up at 3 in the morning and not been able to get back to sleep? And you've got a meeting and you're
Hmm.
starting to think, like you said, the countdown, and then you look up and like, if you don't get rid of that, you're going with it. Like,
Yeah.
that was the worst purchase ever."
It's not a great idea. And actually, for the longest time, I just wouldn't look at the time. I'd wake up and think, I'm not looking. I'm not looking. Now I look because 5:30, I'll just get up. Do you know what I mean? So, but
Yeah.
again, I've trained myself to say, 2 o'clock. Well, I'll just stay in bed, and I'll read a book. It's
Yes.
fine. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think it's sort of recognizing that there has been change in the days of like, you have to get 8 hours sleep. You don't. Like, get what you can get, do your best sleep, and that's
And
all
then
you
you'll
can
get
do.
it on the weekend. I
Yeah,
agree. I
that's
think
it.
the one thing I have really learned is your body's changing, your perception
Hmm.
has to change too.
Hmm.
And you don't function like a 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old, so don't act like it. Like, just readjust. I mean, it's a natural change. So anyway,
Exactly right.
I
And
think
I
we're
will
hard on.
say, and I'm outing myself and it doesn't matter, but my husband and I have separate bedrooms and that has been the best sleep decision. We see every woman I tell it to goes, oh, you're so lucky. Well, tell you what, we started it during the pandemic after all of our kids moved back out again after lockdown because we just weren't sleeping and we thought, well, I'm up reading it too, as I just said. He's not sleeping. He gets up at 4:45 to work out. Anyway, so we're like, we're not, you know what I mean? We're not jiving. Our sleep schedules don't jive. So we started sleeping in separate bedrooms. And of course, when we travel, if we're at someone's house or if we have to at the cottage, it's packed, we'll sleep together. It's fine. But I have to tell you, it's the best sleep decision ever. Nothing to do with the relationship. I know so many women who have made the same decisions and everyone's kind of hiding this. And I hear all people say, well, that's like a sleep divorce. Well, yeah, I'm divorcing myself from sleeping with him. Like I'm going to take that piece and
So
have a better
what?
relationship. So I encourage anyone listening that if your partner is amenable to having separate bedrooms, it is the best thing. And you can visit, it's fine.
Yeah, you can have
You know what I
conjugal
mean?
visits.
We don't all have the same sleep schedules, and particularly because
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but men don't go through menopause. So they're not going through the same. Do they want to wake up next to someone who's soaked in sweat? Like, I don't know. Like, I
And you have to
don't, right?
change the bed. Like if you're
Change the
someone who gets
bed.
night sweats, then everybody's up,
So
right?
just if that's a big piece of advice for me is don't be afraid to embrace the separate bedrooms. It's not a reflection of your relationships. It's a reflection of self-care,
You're
actually.
right. And
Yeah.
last night I was with some friends and they had just traveled to Norway. And she said every hotel room, her and her husband had the same bed, like a king, but they both had single duvets. I was
Oh,
like,
that I've heard that too.
that's what I'll be
Exactly.
doing this weekend at IKEA. That.
Exactly right. And also when I travel, if we're in a hotel room, if it's king, I'm like, is it two twins like pushed together? Because I'd rather that. Because even if
Yeah.
they are pushed together, you're separate mattress, separate everything. So we do
Yep.
that sometimes we travel as well. So again, like sleep is important and it is a big part of going through menopause, wrecking that. So any steps you can take to rectify it,
Yeah.
again, it's self-care is what it is.
I'm really glad
Yeah.
that you said that out loud because I am having those conversations. And every time my daughter goes away, we separate rooms and we
See?
have
And
way
and you're
better
like,
sleep.
like this in
Yeah,
bed,
you
right?
get
Yeah,
up when you
exactly.
want. Like when he gets
Yeah.
up earlier than me, I feel anxiety, like, oh crap, I
Right.
should be getting up.
I should get
Right?
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
So
that's a
I
big
love
tip
that.
from me. Yeah.
So you have had a very public career. You're always in the public eye, like I said, TV and radio, and you're an author, like you're doing everything. Did you feel like you had to hide the fact that you were starting to experience, um, going through
Mhm.
menopause or, approaching menopause? Or were you pretty comfortable being open about it? Or
Right.
yeah?
I've always been comfortable with my age. I've never hidden my age. I think I already mentioned it on this podcast, but I've always been open about my age. And I became a grandma at 56, and I was very much, that's fine with me, like becoming a grandma. I'll be honest with you, Jackie, I don't remember specifically talking about menopause. I did do one session once for a brand where we had a younger woman come in and talk about some of the challenges of heavy periods and things like that. And then I talked about it from a menopausal perspective. So it wasn't something I hid per se, but it wasn't something that I promoted, but not for any reason. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah.
quite open about it now, obviously. So I didn't feel that. And maybe because, again, I've never been, I don't care about talking about my age. I think it gave me that level of experience and exposure when I went into the, mom world, when I wrote my parenting books. The mom bloggers were coming up and they were all younger than me and had a different perspective on parenting, which was wonderful. But I thought I'm going to stay up here, not up here, over here with the older kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
With what I'm going through, with teenagers, et cetera, and things like that. So I've always sort of felt like I was more senior compared to a lot of my peers in the market and still continue to feel that way. Real senior citizen senior. But that to me is a position that I don't mind having. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that to me is fine. And now talking about grandparenting as I do, I find a lot of people don't talk about grandparenting and today's grandparents and the challenges that we have. The average age of someone becoming a grandparent in Canada is 56. How about that? That seems young, right? And
That's
that's
me
an
now.
average, Jackie. That's an average, right?
Yeah.
So when I started talking about it, like I'm a Gen Joneser, the one in between the Boomer and the
Yes.
Xer. I'm born in 1963. But a lot of Gen Xers are turning 60 next year. The oldest of them, they were born in 1965. So we're all starting to enter this new era of grandparenting. And what does it mean? We're living longer. We're still working. We're pretty active. A lot of us weren't stay-at-home moms. So we don't really want to be a stay-at-home grandma either, with the kids. So there's a whole bunch of new role definition going on. And I'm happy to be a part of that. And part of that is saying, yeah, I'm old.
Yeah.
That's fine. Like, I think that's fine. We know what the alternative to being old is, Jackie.
Yes, we do. And I
Yes. So,
I think, aging is a privilege and aging
exactly.
healthy is a super
Yes,
privilege,
exactly.
right? Like
Exactly. I
like
think
you
one of
have
the
grandchildren and look how energetic you are.
Yeah, and part of the reason I have that much energy though is of course that I do work at it, as you know, like I work out
Yeah.
every day, and you do have to work out at that. And what I love about that too is it gives my kids the confidence that I can take care of their kids as well too. I can grab
Yeah.
like a toddler out of a parking lot or lift them up or whatever, you know. And I
Yeah.
see that with a lot of grandparents, like that, you know, some of their kids don't trust them to take care of that toddler
Yep.
who can take off in a second. So one of
Yeah.
the things I just want to step back, one of the expressions that I really dislike the most is when people say at our age. And I'm like, first of all, don't lump me in. We might be the same age, but that's just a chronological thing. But it's so self-limiting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At our and I don't like when people say about themselves at my age either, but particularly that at our age. Age has mostly nothing to do with the decisions that we make. We think it does, but it
Yeah.
doesn't. Yeah, it's what
Well,
we're doing. Yeah.
think about it. Like when you're like if you're going through fertility issues, you will get a test that tests your chronological versus your
Hmm.
biological age. Like proof right there that they're not always the same,
They're
right?
not.
So,
They're not.
and I agree. I think, like I remember my grandma was 99 when we finally had to, put her in a nursing home, and she was mowing her lawn with the old push mower up until then. But she had a heart
Amazing.
issues. We put her in a nursing home and she was pushing seniors to the lunchroom. And then within a year, she really declined. I mean,
Yeah.
she was
Yeah.
102 when she passed, but
Wow.
but
Wow.
I know, not good for me. But she, when you're surrounded by like-mindedness, I think it can bring the group average up or bring it down. And I do think
Yes.
it's really important to kind of surround yourself with people who do not give into it. And I agree that that expression at our age is kind of a cop out as to
Hmm.
like, I can't do this anymore. But I
Yeah.
just like covered the Guelph Games last summer, and athletes were there that were up to 90 years old. And sure, like they have walking soccer, but these soccer players, their youngest one was in their 60s. The oldest was a woman who was 82, I think, from San Diego. Anyway, they kicked ass. Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to play against them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're right, like just ignoring the messages and just going with your
And
gut.
self-talk, right? Like a lot of ageism and the feelings about ageism are from ourselves. When
Yeah.
we say things like at our age or things like that. So when we get complained about, oh, that's ageism, it's like, well, what's your own language like about yourself?
Yeah.
Like we have to really examine that. Actually, in my podcast, Go to Grandma Interviewed, you should have her on the show, Dr. Paula Rochon. She's from the National Institute on Aging. And
Oh,
specifically, we talked about ageism in the workplace for women and how it was different for women than men, which duh, sort of. But yeah, it was an interesting
yeah.
discussion. They've done lots of research. And we talked a lot about self, our self-talk in terms of how we talk to ourselves in terms of
Yeah.
ageism. It's really important, like
I
really
love
important.
I love that. I'm
Yeah.
gonna look her up. I
Yeah.
did a little thing on AI. I was doing a post and I said, create a post of three middle-aged business women in a downtown core. Like I just wanted women going
Right.
to work. Oh my God, Kathy, the
Oh
picture
no.
was three women with short curly hair
Yep.
wearing cardigans and carrying old-fashioned purses over their arm,
Oh,
and they
like the
were in a
queen.
downtown core. So all I did was take the WO out. So it's please create an image of three men, professional men.
Right.
These guys had suits on and briefcases and cell phones and gray silvery hair. They were hot. I was like, wait a minute,
So
what's
it's even
wrong?
in AI. It's
It's
everywhere. It's
well,
infiltrated.
AI, right? It's pulling from all
Yeah,
the old
that's true. It's pulling from the
narratives that we
zeitgeist in a
have.
sense, right? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. I remember when I launched Go To Grandma, the radio station came to me with a logo that they wanted to use. It was literally a granny in a cape with gray hair and glasses. And I'm like, you are missing the entire point of my show.
Oh my God.
Right?
I'm so glad you walked away from that,
Yeah,
that
yeah. The
logo.
logo was like, they're like, oh, sorry. I'm like, what? Like, as soon as you hear the word grandma, right, you
Yeah.
conjure up all of this, the gray hair and the glass, the Tweety Bird, granny racing around, or Beverly Hillbillies. Like, these are the granny
Yes.
images that
Yeah.
we have in
Golden
our
Girls, like
minds.
perpetuating that myth, right? Oh my
And the
God.
Golden Girls are now at this point all younger than me, by the way,
Yeah, they are.
except for the mom, I think. Well, maybe, yeah.
She's actually, no,
I
the
was saying she
mom,
was younger. That's right. She was
the
younger,
mom was
wasn't she?
actually younger than some of the other cast.
That's
Like
right. Yeah,
it
yeah.
was
Estelle
crazy
Getty. Yeah,
how
yeah.
young, they were like not even 50s, half of them when they were doing that
I
show in the
know. I
beginning.
know. I know.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
Um, so as someone in the media, like I
Hmm.
love talking to you because you are so comfortable and you don't care about age. Like I think you really are a good example of how to embrace it. But you are surrounded by other media personalities and the media in general. I have a personal feeling that up until a little while ago, the media was doing a disservice to women when we talked about aging and menopause,
Hmm.
especially menopause. And then since then, I've seen, you're very vocal about it, and Tracy Moore, like,
It's great. Yeah.
very open about it. And I friggin' love that she tackles all the big things that women are concerned about.
Hmm.
And there she is, a media personality, not shying away, not stepping away from it. So
Hmm.
I think that's where we're going to see more and more positive change. Do you think now the media is doing a better job, or we still got ways to go?
We have a ways to go. I think we're doing a better job. And again, a lot of it comes from us pushing ourselves out. Like you can't ask permission, you just got to take it. So you got to pitch those subjects, you got to write those articles. You've got to, I just wrote one recently about postmen. JD Vance has come to postmenopausal women should just raise grandchildren.
Yes.
So I wrote an article for Journeyman about that, about yeah, I like my grandkids just fine, but I'm not, so that kind of talk as well is still out there. And when we see something like that, it's sort of on us to respond to it in an educated, intelligent way, not just that's not true. It's like, well, let's talk about this, right? Let's talk
Yeah.
about why that's something that someone feels they can say. So I think it does come from us. I think it is changing. There's still, obviously, we see it all the time in media where veterans are cut from, high profile, high paying positions. I would suggest that, part of that's age, of course. But part of it is also because media budgets are small now, and we know that. So they're going to cut the high paying person to bring in
Yeah.
someone more junior. So there's a bunch of things at play there in terms of what we see in media. The great thing about the world that we live in today, though, is we can create our own media, as you are doing so
Yes.
successfully with this podcast, as people are doing on YouTube, as they're doing, so we don't have to rely on the budgets of these big corporate media. They're always going to, even if they had the money, I still think old people would be cut. I'm just saying, right? That's
Yeah.
just the way it's always operated. It gives them something to blame it on now. But yeah, we can create our own space and our own media. And when you go on Threads, Threads is such a place right now for women 50 plus. I find, actually, in a very supportive place.
Yeah.
And you find your own people, obviously, but yeah, so we can find ourselves online. We can find ourselves in media, and if you're not seeing it, if you're missing it, it's that old thing about, I wish someone would write a book on this. If the book doesn't
Yes.
exist, write it, right? So this
Yeah.
is what yeah, if you don't
Write
see
the
media,
ebook.
idea, and like you didn't see enough going on about menopause, perimenopause, postmenopause, so you're doing it, and I admire you for that. That's what we have to do, is put ourselves out there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And become the role models, become the change we want to see. Um,
exactly.
so my last question, this series, this season is called Girl with a Pearl.
Yeah.
The reason I chose that is because there's a lot of negative perception around aging and menopause, and there are not as many people as like you as I would like to see out there, but I want to create more of that space. Um, so I wanted to know if you have a pearl of wisdom that you can share with women of our age group.
Yeah, I thought about that when you mentioned that. I've been thinking about that. And I think, as a parent, it always bothered me when you'd see those memes that say, you only have 18 summers with your child. Let's make everyone count. Okay, they're around forever. Let me tell you, my 33-year-old's still coming home in the summer sometimes. But so that bugged me, like it's not 18
Yep.
years, stop measuring that. And now I'm seeing you only have 80
80
summers.
summers.
And I'm like,
Stop
can
with
we
that.
stop measuring? So this
Yeah.
is my sort of piece of advice, is stop measuring everything in terms of years. It is the least exciting measurement about you. Let's be honest, right? So if we can stop saying only 80, 80, all of these things, or I think about, I'm 61, and for a while I was like, oh, when my grandson's like 15, I'm going to be 71. Oh well, that's how old I'm going to be. I can't change that. So stop measuring everything in terms of years, days, minutes, whatever. Just take it as they come. Take it one day at a time. If we were less focused on measuring in years and measuring on what we want to do day by day, I think would be so much further ahead. So plan your days, plan your weeks. Don't worry so much about the years, and make sure that, if you're, I don't like the term bucket list either. I need to get rid of that out of everyone's vocabulary, because bucket implies, of course, you're going to die one day. Well, duh, that could be tomorrow. So if there's
Yeah.
something on your bucket list that you can do today, if you have the means to do it, do it. Right? Let's stop with that whole when I'm this age, when I'm that age. Stop measuring. It drives me crazy. Same can be said for your weight, for your whatever. Be healthy, stop measuring. Get off the scale. Just be healthy, eat healthy, exercise, etc. So the numbers, I think, are what does us in sometimes.
That's great advice. I love
Yeah.
that because it
Yeah.
is about the moments, not the minutes or the
It
years, right?
totally
Like,
is. Exactly.
I have to tell you, I am keeping the word bucket list. I use it around the house regularly when I'm upset because the to-do list is not getting done. And then it all gets moved over to the bucket list. Like maybe
Yeah,
one
one
day we'll
day,
have air conditioning again. Maybe one day we'll fix
maybe.
the faucet. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. That's a weird kind of bucket list you got going on. Most people have like do
it's not very
travel the world.
inspirational.
He's got to fix the plumbing. Okay.
It's my marriage bucket list.
See if you can slide in, get a separate bedroom in there and see
I'm
what happens,
trying.
right? Just put it on the list.
That's
Yeah.
why I got my daughter an IEP. Like, go get an education so I can have your room. That's
Exactly.
that's my driving force right now.
I
Kathy,
love it.
thank you so much. I always love talking to you, but I think your perspective is so refreshing and inspiring. So I want to thank you for
Thank
sharing.
you. I want to
Sharing.
thank you for having me on. I love what you're doing, and I'll do everything I can to help promote all of this as well. Because again, you are the voice you want to hear, and you're doing it. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.